Hello, my beautiful friends. Welcome back to another recap video. There were supposed to be 3 of these to get us through the rest of 2023, all of 2024, and 2025. This is the 4th video, and we are in May of 2024. So these are gonna take a while apparently, but I just had so much to tell you, especially about Amsterdam and tour, and that's what we're gonna start off with on this video is May when I was still on tour. But just my first things I've gotta say, you can go check out those previous recap videos if you want to hear what happened before this. I'm going to be jumping into the second half of tour, so if you want to hear about the first half, go listen to that recap video before. And there are plenty of recap videos before that you can also go look at that I filmed way long ago. For the tour months, I wrote down in my notes basically every day because so much happened that I really just wanted to cover it all. So on May 1st, we were driving from Northern California to Portland, Oregon to stay the night there. I had never been to Oregon. We stayed in YWAM housing. It was kind of funny because when I had emailed the person to talk about, hey, can we stay at your base? They, I guess, gave the girls the impression that we were going to be like old ladies from Amsterdam because I had just told them, hey, I just did the APC in Amsterdam and my last name was Dutch. So they were kind of surprised to see 2 like young 20-year-olds. But that was interesting because my experience with YWAM bases so far has been kind of a large housing situation where everybody can live there and then they have rooms for classrooms and dining halls and whatever. And this one was more just like YWAM organized roommates. Like they were just like a bunch of girls living in one house and then they all got together to do like worship nights sometimes. They were great hosts. And they had a really cute dog. So that was good. And then we were supposed to drive immediately to Montana right when we woke up because that was like a long drive. But neither of us had been to Portland. And so Rachel had a couple things she wanted to do there, trying, I think, like some biscuits or something. And my dad told me we had to go to Voodoo Donuts, which were so good. And that's what got me addicted to Voodoo Donuts. I love them still. My friend Aaron from my DTS texted me and he was like, you didn't tell me you were in Portland. And I was like, yeah, I didn't think you lived close to here. He's like, I live 20 minutes away from there. And so we waited for him and got coffee at Stumptown for a little bit, got to catch up with him. We also went to Powell's. We had so little time, so Rachel and I were both like, we have 15 minutes, we're splitting up, go. And I wish we could have spent so much more time there because that is just a beautiful bookstore. I was able to get her a birthday present. She collects Little Women books and we both love Little Women, but I like the movie more than the book, so I'm not really like a collector of them, but she collects them. And so I found a copy I'd never seen before. There was only one on the shelf, so I knew she wouldn't get it. And yeah, we ended up leaving Portland at like 12:30 and we got into Montana really late at like 10:30 or something. Luckily, the person that ran the hospitality department at YWAM Montana was very gracious and allowed us to just kind of check ourselves in. It was just so cool to get to show Rachel where I had been for DTS because obviously she had seen it on FaceTime and I've just talked about it so much. And that was a common thread through a lot of tour was like, now Rachel knows all of my friends. And that's just awesome. I love that my best friend knows all my friends. And I met a couple of hers too from high school, like when we stayed with Ellie in Abilene. It was just so cool, like beyond spending so much time together to like get to walk through memories with her. And yeah, it was fun to stay in YWAM housing. I hadn't done that since DTS. And yeah, we had a rest day on May 3rd. We drove up Blacktail Mountain, which is a mountain that's right by YWAM, Montana, and you can just see the stars so perfectly there. I've seen plenty of shooting stars up there and just had amazing conversations with people. It was a little different with the Subaru. Normally we'd take a pickup and that would just make a little more sense, but Rachel and I went up there and just looked at the stars and that was a really cool thing to show her. And YWAM Montana has a studio. It's called Studio 501. I had never gotten to see it when I was doing my DTS, but the guy that's like the head of the music department was a guest speaker in the APC. And so I met up with him and got to see Studio 501 and it was really funny. He was like so nerding out. He was like talking to me about the cabling underneath the studio and I was like, dude, I just want to know about like your instruments and your gear. But that was the final rest day of tour. We only had 2 rest days the whole time, and I mentioned in the last recap video that The driving days did feel pretty restful because it was just the two of us and we were chilling out in the car, eating snacks, listening to music. I slept in the car. Thank you, Rachel, for driving. But it was very nice to have a rest day. And Montana was kind of a weird spot to do it because I didn't necessarily have friends to hang out with. We probably should have done it in California. But again, I was on a time crunch because I was trying to play college towns with my friends who were about to go back home for the summer. I had one of those in Chicago, and so we were still yet to reach Chicago, and we kind of had to keep that schedule tight. On May 4th, I played my Montana show. I played at Glacier Perks Coffee, and that one was so small. There was just Rachel, my friend Audrey, my friend Caitlin, and then Toby Scott came, which is very kind of him. He was like roasting my audio setup, but I was like, dude, I left for tour 3 days after I got back from Amsterdam. Give me a break. It was very nice of him to come. He is worked with Bruce Springsteen and then came and saw my little show. It was super, super tiny. Nobody was really there. They put me in a room that was kind of separate from the rest of the coffee shop, so I wasn't getting a lot of foot traffic. But it was still fun to play Montana, and they gave me free coffee, and I wrote a little verse about that in a song that I wrote later on. And then after that, they were having an art showcase at YWOW Montana, and my friend Caitlin was playing in it. She was playing an original song. She is a brilliant songwriter. I went on my mission trip from DTS with her, and that was like 2.5, 3 months that we spent together, and it was just a lot of processing. I had kind of a difficult time there because I was dealing with grief. She just was really present with me there. She also, she's a brilliant songwriter. She has a song called Stuck Here that is one of my favorite songs of all time. It's so good. So she was playing and we got to go see her in that showcase. And then they did like a mocktail bar. It was so cute. It was just super fun. And I got to see some people I knew that were still at YWOW Montana. Most of them have moved around, and I'm lucky for that because that's how I've had so many places to stay. May 5th is my birthday. It is also Rachel's birthday. She's 2 years older than me though, but it was both of our birthday that day, and we were spending the whole day driving through the middle of nowhere, Montana. So to make it fun, we went to the store and bought as many weird beverages as we could find. We got like a canned Earl Grey latte, we got some canned coffees, we got some juices, some sparkling waters, we got those like kids things that have the little character on the top as sippy cups. It was my 21st birthday. I wasn't drinking until tour was over so I could just protect my voice. And so we decided to do all of those funny drinks. And most of them were duds, I'm not gonna lie, but the kids sippy cups, those were fire. I also got a coffee that morning with my friend Audrey, and that was really great. She was super stressed because the school she was doing was so involved, and I think she was stressing herself out a little bit more than necessary too, but it's because she wanted to do a really good job. She was just so encouraging. It was the quickest coffee, but she was so encouraging and so present with me there. I'll give you the quick recap of the rest of that day, but I have something important to tell you about that. We just drove all day, and then we got to our little Airbnb. It was in the middle of nowhere. It was kind of creepy, not gonna lie. Like, it was totally set up nice, but it was just in the middle of nowhere and very log cabin-y. We made mac and cheese in mugs, and I got frozen cookies to make in the oven, and we watched Ex Machina. Something very substantial happened for me and Rachel. It was kind of a rainy day. You should have seen my car. It was filthy. We were driving through mud. Towards the end of the day as we were driving, there was like this tiny little sliver of a rainbow that started to pop up. And I was like, oh, there's a rainbow. That's so cute and pretty. I love it. And Rachel was like, let's get more. I want there to be more. And it started to kind of creep up a little bit and creep up a little bit and creep up a little bit. And it was so cool. And Rachel just kept being like, more rainbow, more rainbow. And I was just like trying to be excited about the rainbow, I suppose. And as we kept driving, we ultimately got to the point where we could see the entire full rainbow right over the road we were driving. So like it was like over us. And then a double rainbow appeared too. And it took a while, but Rachel just kept pushing for it, and we ended up driving in the wrong direction for a little while because we were just so entranced by the rainbow, but there was nobody around us. We were the only ones driving on that road. For one, we were like, this is a birthday present because no one else is seeing this, and we're here. Like, this is for us. We both took a lot of meaning from that event, and I don't really remember what Rachel took from it. I'll have to ask her. But what I really learned from that was I had been struggling a little bit with the notion of expecting big things from God. Don't get me wrong, I had an amazing first quarter of the year. But I think as I pursue music, a lot of times I'm like, I don't deserve success. To be fair, I don't know that anyone really does. I have a hard time holding success in music and humility in my faith in the same kind of conversation, in the same, I don't know, just space. I'm always empowered and inspired when people are like, yeah, ask God for big things and expect Him to bless you and seek that out because it reflects a belief that He will, and that's something that honors Him. But I just struggle with that, and I worry sometimes that asking for those things will distract me from what He wants me to want, if that makes any sense. A lot of times I'll be afraid to ask for big things, but I saw Rachel being like, we want more rainbow, we want more rainbow, we want more rainbow. We got more rainbow. We got so much more rainbow. We got as much rainbow as you could possibly get. And so now whenever I see a rainbow or I just think of that time, rainbows already have a biblical motif, but it just reminds me to trust that God wants to bless me and to ask Him for those things and to allow space for those things not to happen, but still to want them anyway. So that was just really cool and special and really blew our minds. On May 6th, we drove the rest of the way to Minnesota, and I have a ton of family there. That's where I was born. That was cool to go and drive there. We stayed with my grandparents, and on the way, we drove through North Dakota, and I actually saw my parents' high school on the road. It said the Spuds, and I was like, that was my parents' mascot, because you remember when your parents tell you their mascot for high school was the Spuds. But yeah, we arrived and stayed with my grandparents, and they were so excited because they got to meet Rachel. Rachel ended up having to leave tour and go back home. She had planned that from the beginning, but that was when she departed, and my friend Abigail, who I went to church with on Cape Cod, she flew out to Minnesota to do the rest of the trip with me. And it wasn't that long, but I so appreciate having two friends that would be willing to do all that with me. And so my grandparents got to meet Abigail and Rachel, and they were on fire about that. So yeah, May 7th was a very full day. I got lunch and coffee with my childhood best friend, Greta. I met her when I was 3 in preschool, and we have still kept up a friendship. So that's really neat. I think that's something not a lot of people get to have, and I'm glad that we have that. Rachel didn't know until we were driving somewhere in Minnesota that the Mall of America is there. And I grew up going to the Mall of America, and so that's like no big deal to me. But she was freaking out, and so we were like, we have to go. She was so excited to get caribou, and we walked around. She was like, there is a theme park in a mall? And I was like, yes, Rachel, there's a theme park in a mall. The ride prices have gotten astronomical. It's wild. Didn't totally recognize how much they were as a kid, but they're insane. I don't know if they've risen a lot since I was a kid or what, but whew. After that, we made our way to Honor Coffee and Raw Juice, and they were amazing to host. They stayed open a little bit later than normal and set up this whole space for me, and they had picnic tables outside, and that was one of the biggest shows. A lot of people showed up to that because my grandparents were there, my aunt and uncle, or I think just my aunt and all my cousins, a bunch of my dad's old friends and college buddies and coworkers and my grandparents' friends and my cousin's grandma, like everyone was there. And that was just such an honor. There were a ton of people I didn't know too that were like sitting there vibing out, singing my songs. And that was just an amazing experience and so sweet to get to connect with so many people from my childhood and that everybody would come and support. It was so, so nice. Honor Coffee and Raw Juice, they included my show in their 2024 recap, which was just so sweet to me. And I am so honored that that day would matter to them like it did to me. Then on May 8th, Abigail and I drove to Chicago and we stayed with my friend Grace from Moody. Now, you can watch this in like, I think my life recap or something, but I went to Moody Bible Institute for 1 semester and had a horrible experience. I don't want to say that would be the case for everyone because I don't think it's the institution so much as it is the collection of people that were there at the time. Yeah, I just didn't click with any of them. I don't think I was really ready for that kind of independence in Chicago, but I made one really good friend, and it was Grace. And she was an RA at the time, and so she was able to hook us up with a room. One thing I've forgotten to mention that I just remembered actually is during tour, I was having the feeling that I needed to move from Cape Cod at some point. And I didn't know where. It was kind of between New York, Boston, LA, Nashville, or Chicago. Originally, Chicago was not on the list, but then I was praying about it and I couldn't stop thinking about Lincoln Hall, this venue in Chicago that I'd seen a bunch of shows at. And so I was like, that's connected to music. Maybe I need to move to Chicago. I don't know. And so I was really keeping a keen eye at my experiences in each of those cities to see if that's where I was supposed to move. It was very clearly not where I was supposed to move because it was pretty awful. I like to call Chicago my toxic ex because I've lived there twice, once when I was a kid and then once for college. And I love Chicago. I love the culture there, the restaurants, how much there is to do. It's a beautiful city, but it has always treated me poorly. I've never really had a great time living there. I didn't have a good time being there for tour either. Grace was very nice. She was very accommodating. My dad happened to be there for something for work, and so he took me and Abigail out to the Girl and the Goat, which is an amazing restaurant. I was giving Moody another chance. I was going back to this place that had really not been great for my mental health. It felt very weird. I actually saw some people I recognized, and I don't think they recognized me, but even if they did, it was probably like, maybe she still goes here. They were working on the plumbing while we were there from, I want to say, like 8 p.m. to 8 a.m., there was zero running water. You couldn't shower, wash your hands, wash your face, and then in order to use the bathroom, you had to go and get a bucket of water from the big bucket in the hallway, use the bathroom, and then manually flush the toilet by pouring that water down the drain. And I understand that that's a thing that they have to do sometimes, but the fact that it would happen right when we were there is nuts. It was also like right before finals, so I don't know why they would do that. I really feel like they could have done that in the summer. On May 9th, it was my show day. It was kind of rainy, and I went to Spoken Bird, and I was talking to the barista dude, and he was doing his best to be helpful. He didn't know what was going on. Whatever manager person came, they were like hardly aware that I was playing, and they were like, hey, we were thinking of having you set up outside. And I was like, it is raining, so I cannot do that. The excuse I gave them was that my equipment can't be in the rain, which is so true and valid, but also like nobody's gonna be out there. I'm gonna be playing to just air. It was such a weird space because it was like a long hallway. There was the Spoken Bird on the wall, and then there was this like side room where everybody could sit and work, and they said under no circumstances can I play in there. But then here is like this welcome desk for some like, I don't know if it was a science center or a women's center or a women's science center or what. And they set me up like right here. And so I was like behind the coffee part, but in front of the science part. They were having like mommy and me classes that were getting out. And so I was trying to play songs about like problematic crushes and relationships while kids are screaming. And it was like a 2-story thing, you know, like it's like 2 stories and then they have like the walkway around and stuff. So it was so echoey in there. And then the only people that were able to come were Abigail, my dad was there, and that's it. I had my dad and Abigail there, and then everyone else was not interested or screaming. That was not a good show. I felt very underappreciated, undervalued, and part of tour was having to insert myself into places and be assertive and be like, hey, I want to play here, let me play here, like hoping for the best, you know, and being okay if I'm not playing to a lot of people. But having just played that Minneapolis show, which was so amazing, it was pretty dejecting. We finished the show and I got to go to my favorite bakery in Chicago, Deflowered. It's a gluten-free bakery, but they have a lot of vegan stuff too, and their oatmeal cream pies are just so good. I ordered food from Kitchen 17, which is my favorite place to DoorDash from in Chicago, and Grace and I sat on her floor and ate that. And then Death Becomes Her was doing its out-of-town tryout in Chicago, and so Abigail and I went to that. That was fun. I was very glad that she would be willing to go to that with me, and she does like musicals, but way less than I do. So on May 10th, we drove to Buffalo, New York to stay the night. So we stayed a night in a hotel. My dad paid for that one. Thank you, Dad. Just watched a movie and vibed out. On May 11th, we drove back to Cape Cod. She wanted to go see Niagara Falls. It was like 40 minutes in the opposite direction, and I was like, Abigail, I really want to go home. And I feel bad. We should have done that, and there was very little empathy there because she had just gotten there. She was ready for the time of her life, so I should have done that, and I regret that. I was very glad to be home. It had been a crazy 5 months, and I just needed to be back. But yeah, I got a little bit of time to rest, thank goodness. And then on May 16th, I played my Cambridge show. I had reached out to a bunch of places in Boston and Cambridge, and 2 places agreed to have me play. So I just did both. I played this place called Revival Cafe and Kitchen. It was kind of a coffee shop, but it was also like a restaurant, and I played at like 4. So that's a bad time for coffee or restaurant. And so nobody was really there, and it was the first show I had to play where I didn't have someone to be there with me to like take photos and help me set up or anything. And so less than that being a burden, it was just like feeling kind of bare and like alone in that and having to be completely assertive. And they were like, we should have you back. You're awesome. And I was like, nobody was here, but thanks. I was trying to come up with how many things I could do on tour. Rachel and I were like, how many crazy things can we do? And, you know, we went to a baseball game and I had seen a musical. We went to Disneyland. I want to say we went to a movie at some point, but I'm not sure. I don't know. We were just trying to come up with like as many things as we could do that we enjoyed. And one thing I hadn't done was go to a concert. And so I went to Whale Jam that night at Roadrunner, and Adam Melcher was playing that, so I got to see him again, but I dipped before I could say hi to him again. But that was also Briston Maroney. And then on May 17th, I played Boston, and that was at the Well Coffee House, and they were so sweet. They like set up an area for me that was a lot more packed, just with like foot traffic more than anything. My dad brought a bunch of his coworkers, and they were all really happy to sit and listen, and that was so kind of them to come. So yeah, that show went well. I got a free coffee. Anytime they gave me a free coffee or food or anything, that was a win. And then my dad had to work or get a coffee with someone, I don't know, so I spent a little time in Boston. I went to Jennifer Lee's, which is in the like Boston Hall thing, and that was a vegan and gluten-free bakery as well, but like way small. But they had cannolis, and I was shocked. I'd never seen a vegan cannoli before, and that's a big Boston thing, so I got one of those, and that was fun. I walked around listening to the new Billie Eilish album. She had just put that out, and I briefly went into Beacon Hill Books, but then my dad was ready to drive back to Cape Cod, and I was mad about that because I wanted to stay there. We also caught up with my sister because she was at boarding school in Natick, and we went to Press Juice. I love that place, and there's not one close to me. Nashville needs to get a Press Juice. Then my final show of tour was on May 18th, and that was on Cape Cod, and that was the only venue I played. That was at the Listening Room of Cape Cod, which belonged to Steeple Street Music Academy, which I was a teacher at. They had converted the preschool that I used to sub at into a music venue, and I was one of the very first people to ever play it, and it was very cool and awesome that they would allow me to play there, and I didn't have to pay them anything up front. They just split the cost with me of the tickets, and the tickets were cheap. So that was a show I actually made money on. Quite a few of my friends came. It was very kind of them to do that. They all brought their friends as well. And it was just like a super intimate space, but I got to have actual sound and everything. And I played a longer show for that one. I played like all my Amsterdam songs and everything because my family was there, and it was good. It was a great way to end the tour. At that point, I was feeling very worn out. I was feeling very full and passionate. I had gotten to just invest in so many people, invest in myself and my career, and I had so many highs. It was amazing, but I had been going nonstop for months. As I said in the past recap video, Amsterdam was supposed to be a restful period, and it wasn't, but that's okay. And I enjoyed what it was, but I hadn't had that rest. And so after tour, I was like, I need to rest desperately. I didn't really have to work. I was still gigging at Bread and Roses and a couple other places, but my rent to my parents was pretty cheap. They just were having me put it into investment account, and it was not very much. And so I was able to make all the rent I needed to pay them gigging. And I didn't really have any leftover money, but that was okay. I just wanted to sit around and relax and take a breath and journal and read and all that. So after I got back from tour, I wrote 2 songs. I wrote a song called Smirnoff, and that was about just one of my friends and the experiences they went through. We won't go too deep into that yet. But that one, I really just let myself write whatever I felt like. I enjoy songwriting most when I don't beat myself up over it, but I beat myself up over it a lot. And so I really try not to make myself have any rules and just to let myself write freely.
I wish you were better. I wish you relented when your parents told you no. I wish you would hold yourself to higher standards. Ask for more than what you're handed. Make your men adore you with their soul. I wish you were brighter. I wish you'd consider yourself worthy of much more. I wish you would go through your life sober. Make a plan for when you're older. Plant your own seeds in more fertile soil. I wish you were better.
And then I also wrote the song Non-Anxious because I finished the book The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry by John Mark Comer, and he talks about being a non-anxious person, and that really resonated with me, not just in like not having anxiety, because I do have anxiety, but just to lead your life with a pace and an understanding and a thought process that you don't want to cause other people anxiety, you don't want to cause yourself anxiety, and to move with that slowness and that awareness.
Oh, how many times have I spoke out of time? 'Cause I fear things unsaid, meant my thoughts had no word. I'm learning to listen and trying to be non-anxious.
As for books, I did finish The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry, and that is just a phenomenal book. It is so good and so essential. It is a Christian book, but I think it could be useful for a lot of people just to slow down, and I've totally disregarded all of its advice since I read it, but I probably am due to reread it. And then I also finished Poor Things by Alistair Gray, and we could talk about that for a while, but I knew the movie was coming out, and I didn't really know what it was going to be like, because it definitely has a reputation now, but I wanted to read the book. I did, and I enjoyed the book, actually. I really enjoyed the writing pacing. Yeah, just Alistair Gray was a really entertaining author, but I could go on and on about how horrible that movie is, and I guess we can talk about movies now, but it was like Yorgos Lanthimos, I think is the director's name, and I do not like him. I will say I just watched Begonia. I cannot take that, but he directed that. And I wish someone else had directed it because he just kind of drew out the gore and sensationalism of the story rather than telling the story itself. I'm gonna spoil the book, skip past if you don't want that spoiled, but the plot of Poor Things is that there's a woman who dies off the side of a bridge. She's pregnant, and so this like old-timey doctor, before there were like rules about cadavers, took her body and put the brain of her unborn child into her brain to revive her. And so she was like a 20-something-year-old woman with the brain of a newborn. That is just a pretty, can I swear? I haven't yet in this video. It's a pretty fucked up concept. But everybody was reading it and talking about it, and so I was like, okay, I'm interested. And in the book, it is creepy, but like, you're supposed to think it's creepy, and then at the end of the book you find out someone connected to the main character, that woman, I don't remember who, it might have been like a husband or a dad or something, I don't know. He was on his deathbed and writing this story for her to leave her something like as he died, but she was like, this is crazy, he's out of his mind and he's dying, these are his like just deranged thoughts, right? And the movie never says that. It totally negates the whole thing of the book. And like, obviously, I don't know that we really needed Poor Things as a book either. At least it's saying like, hey, like men can have deranged thoughts about the role of a woman and like what they deserve to do with her, I suppose. I feel like that direction of that movie was very perverted. The other thing is that the sex stuff in the book lasted for like a page or two. And the sex stuff in the movie was like half an hour. It's ridiculous. It was so sensationalist. I did not enjoy it, and it totally was not what the book was going for. I thought some of the cinematography was cool, but that was it. So the book is not bad. It was kind of enjoyable, but the movie sucked. And I'm just not a Yorgos Lanthimos girl. I cannot do him. But yeah, I started to watch a lot more movies. So we also watched Ex Machina. It was like classic A24. I don't know if we really knew what we were getting into. I watched Anyone But You while I was on tour with Abigail because that's one of her favorite movies ever. She just loves that movie. And it, you know, as far as rom-coms go, it's a good time. I watched Unfrosted with my family. That was a random pull, but lots of comedians were in that. You know those movies where like they're kind of new and they like stack them full of comedians and like great actors, and then they just like never take off because the script is pretty bad? That was one of those. And then I watched American Fiction by myself. That was like kind of depressing and never really like, but it never like hit me in the heart. Maybe it just didn't resonate with me. And then I watched Poor Things, of course. And then I watched Challengers with my sister, which is a great movie. That soundtrack is fire. The Challengers editors on TikTok, they know something about that movie that I don't, because those are so good. And the movie just didn't hit like that for me. But Zendaya's great. Mike Feist deserves his flowers. Josh O'Connor is awesome. And my sister made me watch Bottoms. And I was like really not sure about that going into it because I am straight and she is not. And I was like, this is gonna be just so not something I understand. But I got into it and it's just like really funny. And I love Io Adibiri too. The Marshawn Lynch, I think is his name, in it is so funny. Oh, that one dude that's in The Idea of You, I don't remember his name. Ugh, that's just like a really funny movie. And I can't watch it with everyone. It's like a certain audience, but oh, it's so funny. And then I watched The Idea of You as well. I was just kind of in a like bad romance movie kind of mood, and that one feels so Wattpad. For music, I was really into Corinna's cover of Goodbye Yellow Brick Road. It was actually my first 2 songs on my Receiptify that month because there were 2 different versions of it. Well, they were the same song, but just 2 different releases, and I was listening to it so much. It's just so gorgeous and really, I think, reinterprets the song very well. I also was listening to a ton of Billie Eilish's new album. It was fire, and I get into Billie Eilish moods where I'll kind of like forget to listen to her for a while, and a lot of her stuff to me isn't very like routinely listenable, but I'll like listen through the entire album or just like any of her entire albums, and I'm like, wow, that was really well written, well sung, well produced. It's Phineas, so of course. My favorites are The Diner, the L'amour de ma vie or something, I don't know. Those ones are good. And then in my top songs, Gutenberg was there. And I think Rachel and I were listening to that a bunch on tour, but I'm telling you, it's just so good for a re-listen. I actually, the other day, was listening to it again. It's just such a good time. I love it. It's so dumb. It's so good. All right, friends, I'm gonna end the video here. We got through another 1 month. Hooray! This is gonna take us forever. I think this is gonna be the last video I film before the new year. So Happy New Year if that's when you're watching this. I don't know when I'll get it edited. The goal is to do that before I leave for Christmas, but God only knows. But the next videos hopefully will cover some more ground because there was just so much to talk about with tour, but then I spend several months relaxing and we're just gonna have like a lot of books and movies and music to talk about, but not that much life stuff to talk about. So we should be good. Of course, then 2025 is gonna come and I'll have to cover all that. But thank you for sticking around and for watching all of these still. I love you, I appreciate you. Yeah, let me know as always if you have any questions. Let me know what songs you'd like to see once I get back to making those. And yeah, we will catch up soon. I love you. Thanks for watching, bye.